I will never forget that day in the Montana dust. A cruel trainer raised a heavy hand to strike a young Mustang. My heart stopped as the blow landed. But what that horse did next changed my life forever. The air was hot. It smelled like dry sage and sweat. I was standing by the corral, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. There stood Buck, a man with a heart as hard as the Montana granite. He held a heavy leather strap. In front of him was a foal, a little colt we called Spirit. Spirit was trembling. His legs were thin. He was barely off his mother's milk. Buck didn't have patience. He didn't have kindness. He only had the desire to break things. He wanted Spirit to bow. He wanted the wild to leave those big brown eyes. "Move, you useless beast," Buck roared. Then it happened. He swung. The sound of the strike echoed off the barn walls. I felt the pain in my own skin. I didn't think. I didn't pause. I ran. I threw myself between that heavy strap and the shivering foal. "Stop it, Buck! He's just a baby!" I screamed. My voice cracked, but I stood my ground. Buck's face turned a deep, angry red. He looked at me like I was a weed he wanted to pull from the earth. "Get out of the way, Sarah," he growled. "This horse needs to learn who the boss is. If he doesn't break now, he's just meat for the market." He raised the strap again, aimed right at my shoulder. I closed my eyes. I waited for the sting, but the blow never came. Instead, I felt a strange warmth. Something soft pressed against my back. I opened my eyes and looked over my shoulder. Spirit, the terrified little foal, had stepped forward. He wasn't running away. He had wrapped his long, thin neck around my waist. He was hugging me. He was trying to protect me. Buck froze. His arms stayed in the air. The silence was so heavy you could hear the flies buzzing. For the first time in his life, Buck looked confused. He didn't know how to fight love. He lowered his arm and spat on the ground. "You're fired, Sarah," he muttered. "Take the mutt and get off my land. You'll both be starving by winter." I didn't care. I had Spirit, but as I led him away, I realized I had no money, no home, and a broken-hearted horse. Stay with me, because what happened when we reached the mountains is something you won't believe. The first few weeks were hard. We lived in an old leaning shack on a small piece of land my grandfather had left me. It was beautiful, but it was empty. I had no hay. I had no grain. Spirit followed me everywhere like a shadow. He was still thin. He still jumped at every loud noise. I spent my nights crying into his mane. I felt like a failure. I had saved him from the strap, but was I leading him to a slow end? I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. But then, a small light appeared. A neighbor, an old man named Walt, brought over a bag of oats. "I heard what you did," he said. "The world needs more hearts like yours, Sarah." My hope began to rise, just a little. One evening while Spirit was grazing, I heard a low, mournful sound from the woods. It sounded like a sob. I followed it and found a mare. She was old. Her ribs were showing. But the worst part, she was completely blind. Her eyes were cloudy, like the morning mist. She had been abandoned. I named her Lady. Now I had 2 hungry mouths to feed, and a winter storm was rolling in from the north. The clouds turned a bruised purple. The wind began to howl through the cracks in my shack. I spent the whole night in the small barn with them. I piled the little straw I had around their legs. I sang to them. I sang the old songs my grandmother used to sing. Suddenly, a massive gust of wind ripped the door right off the hinges. Snow swirled inside. Spirit panicked. He started to bolt toward the dark, freezing woods. If he left, he would freeze. "Spirit, no!" I yelled. But it was Lady, the blind mare, who saved us. She couldn't see, but she could feel. She stepped into Spirit's path. She let out a soft, deep whinny. It was the calmest sound I've ever heard. Spirit stopped. He pressed his head against her side. I stood there shivering, holding them both as the snow piled up. We survived the night by huddling together, 3 broken souls keeping each other warm. But the true danger wasn't the cold. It was something much more terrifying hiding in the shadows of the canyon. The storm passed, but it left a silence that felt dangerous. The local ranchers started talking. They said a mountain lion, a big old cougar, had moved down from the high peaks. It was hungry. It was bold. I saw the tracks near the barn, huge paws. I didn't have a gun. I only had a lantern and my voice. Every time a twig snapped, my heart skipped a beat. I felt so small. I felt so helpless. I was just one woman against the wild. One night, Spirit wouldn't stop pacing. He knew. He could smell the predator. It was 2 a.m. The moon was a sliver of silver. I heard it. A scream. Not a horse's scream, but the high, chilling cry of a mountain lion. I grabbed my lantern and ran to the corral. The light flickered. I saw 2 glowing eyes in the darkness. They were yellow and cold. The cougar was perched on the fence, ready to spring. Its muscles were like coiled springs. It was looking right at Spirit. "Get away!" I screamed, swinging the lantern. The cat didn't move. It hissed. It was a sound that went right to my bones. I stepped forward, even though my legs felt like jelly. I knew if I showed fear, it was over. I grabbed a pitchfork, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped it. Suddenly, Spirit did something amazing. He didn't run to the back of the pen. He stood in front of Lady, the blind mare. He lowered his head and stamped his hooves. He was a foal acting like a stallion. I yelled again, a primal sound of rage and love. I threw a rock. It hit the fence near the cat. The cougar shifted. It looked at me, then at the horses. It realized this wasn't an easy meal. With one last growl, it vanished into the pines. I sank to my knees, gasping for air. The adrenaline was leaving me, and I felt like I could sleep for a year. As I walked Spirit back to the barn, I saw something caught on the wire fence where the cougar had been. I reached out and picked it up. It was a tuft of hair, long, golden brown hair. My heart stopped. This wasn't cougar hair, and it wasn't Spirit's or Lady's. I knew this hair. It belonged to Luna. Luna was Spirit's mother. Buck had told me she was killed by lions months ago. He said he saw the body, but this hair was fresh. It was soft. It was alive. Could it be? Could Luna still be out there in the Great Divide? Wait until you see what we found at the edge of the Devil's Canyon. The next day I went to see Buck. I showed him the hair. I was shaking with hope. "She's alive, Buck. Luna is alive." Buck just laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "That's just old hair, Sarah. You're dreaming. Luna is gone, and soon your land will be too." He handed me a paper. It was a notice from the bank. Because I had no job, I was losing the shack. I had 30 days. 30 days to find a way to save my horses and find a mother who everyone said was dead. I felt like I was drowning. I sat on the porch and watched the sunset. The mountains looked so big. I felt so tiny. Was I just a crazy old woman chasing ghosts? I couldn't give up. I packed a small bag. I put Spirit on a lead rope. Lady had to stay with Walt, the neighbor. Spirit and I headed into the Devil's Canyon. The trails were narrow. The rocks were sharp. People told me it was a death trap. But Spirit knew. He was sniffing the air. He was leading me. We walked for 3 days. My boots were falling apart. My water was low. On the 4th morning, we found a hidden valley. It was a secret place, green and lush, hidden by high red walls. And there, standing by a stream, was a herd of wild Mustangs. In the center was a beautiful golden brown mare. She was scarred. She had a limp, but she was standing tall. "Luna," I whispered. The mare turned. She saw Spirit. She let out a whinny that shook the very walls of the canyon. Spirit broke free from my hand. He ran. He ran faster than I'd ever seen him move. They met in the middle of the meadow. They rubbed their noses together. They breathed into each other's nostrils. I stood there and cried. Buck had lied. He had tried to break her, and when he couldn't, he drove her into the canyon and told everyone she was dead so he wouldn't have to admit he failed. But our victory was short-lived. I heard the sound of a truck engine, a heavy rumbling sound. Buck had followed us. He wasn't alone. He had 3 other men with him. They had trailers. They had ropes. "Well, look at that," Buck said, stepping out of his truck. "You found my property, Sarah, and you found a whole lot more. These wild ones will fetch a high price." "They're not property, Buck. They're free." I stood in front of the herd. "Not on paper they aren't," he smirked. "This canyon is state land, and I have a permit to gather strays. You're trespassing." The men started to unload the horses. They were going to take them all. Luna, Spirit, and the whole wild family. I felt a darkness close in. I had found them just to lose them. The men moved in with their lassos. The wild horses were terrified. Luna stood her ground, baring her teeth, shielding the younger foals. "Don't do this," I pleaded. "Look at them. They're a family." Buck ignored me. He stepped toward Luna with a heavy rope. "I should have broken you a long time ago," he hissed. I looked at Spirit. He was standing by my side. I remembered the day Buck struck him. I remembered the day Spirit hugged me. I realized that these horses didn't belong to Buck. They didn't even belong to me. They belonged to the sky. I did the only thing I could. I didn't fight with my hands. I fought with my heart. I stepped into the middle of the herd. I began to sing that same old song, the song of the mountains, the song of the wind. The wild horses stopped. They looked at me. They felt the calm. Buck's men hesitated. They had never seen anything like this. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. It wasn't a truck. It wasn't a storm. From the other side of the canyon, a second herd appeared. Hundreds of Mustangs. They were led by a massive black stallion. They had heard Luna's call. They had heard the song. They thundered down the slope like a living wave of fur and hooves. Buck's men ran for their trucks. They were terrified of the sheer power of the wild. Buck stood there frozen. The black stallion slid to a halt right in front of Buck. He didn't bite him. He didn't kick him. He just looked at him. A look of pure, ancient authority. Buck fell backward into the dirt. He was nothing. He was a small, angry man in the face of a great, beautiful world. "Get out," I said, my voice quiet and steady, "and never come back." Buck scrambled into his truck and sped away, leaving a cloud of dust that was quickly swallowed by the clean mountain air. The two herds joined. Spirit was playing with the other foals. Luna was grazing peacefully. I was losing my home, yes, but I had saved the soul of the West. I walked back to my shack, ready to pack my bags. I didn't know where I would go, but I knew I was at peace. When I arrived, Walt was waiting for me. He was holding a piece of paper. "The town heard about what happened, Sarah," he said, his eyes moist. "The local ranchers, the ones who remember the old ways, they took up a collection. They bought your land from the bank, and they bought the rights to the canyon. It's a sanctuary now. It's yours forever." I couldn't speak. I leaned against the porch railing and watched the horizon. Then I felt a familiar warmth. I turned around. It wasn't Spirit. It wasn't Lady. It was Luna. She had left the herd. She had walked all the way back from the canyon. She stood there in the golden evening light looking at me. She walked up and rested her heavy, tired head on my shoulder. I felt her breath against my neck. I felt her heart beating against mine. In that moment, the world was perfect. No more strikes. No more ropes, only the sound of the wind in the pines and the quiet breath of a mother who had come home. We stood there for a long time, just a woman and a horse, two survivors watching the Montana stars come out one by one. If this story touched your heart, it's because we all have a little bit of the wild left inside of us. We all want to believe that kindness is stronger than the strap. If you want to see more incredible stories of rescue and hope, please click on the video on your screen right now. There are so many more animals waiting to be heard. And tell me in the comments, have you ever felt a connection with an animal that changed your life? I read every single one of your stories. Thank you for being part of this journey. Remember, no matter how small you feel, your heart can move mountains. I'll see you in the next video.